playing to win is where risk is rewarded. It's where volatility lives. It's where cash crunches are continually invited in on a regular basis. It's where people lose their health, lose their family, lose their life because of playing to win, because sometimes we have the wrong definition of success that comes from society rather than from ourselves. So, there's this different mindset, and by the way, this other mindset's a lot sneakier because I don't feel like people that are in the playing not to lose show up to these types of things. The sneakier mindset is the playing to win mindset. The playing to win is something that we put on the cover of magazines. The playing to win is the very thing that had Ryan get so sick at 30 years old because he was just working so hard. It's the same thing that I had when I was like, okay, my partners are they're dead. What am I going to do to keep this all alive? I'm going to do my radio show every single day. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And whatever it takes is the mantra, but this is the question. At what cost? At what cost? Playing to win is where risk is rewarded. It's where volatility lives. It's where cash crunches are continually invited in on a regular basis. It's where people lose their health, lose their family, lose their life because of playing to win, because sometimes we have the wrong definition of success that comes from society rather than from ourselves. So, 2 questions. Number 1, are you playing a game worth winning? And number 2, is the juice worth the squeeze? Like if I showed up and said, you can work harder and make more money, who's really excited about that advice or who wants to punch me in the throat? You know? I mean, do you think someone becomes a billionaire just because they put in more time than you or they work harder? It's about doing the right hard work. Yeah, hard work's part of the equation, but the wrong hard work actually leads to exhaustion. It leads to difficulty. It leads to feeling guilty when you're doing one thing because you're not having any time for another. And there's something in playing to win that almost inevitably happens, and it's the thing I experienced trying to preserve my partner's legacy, which by the way, the answer to helping their legacy was to live and define my own. They would have never wanted me to give up my life and not spending time with my family in the name of, building up theirs. The reality was, after my wife said that to me, said I was an ordinary husband and father, within 6 days, I gave one of the divisions of our business to the existing employees and said, if you want it, it's yours. I'm going to start working from home. I'm not going to answer every email. Who just feels like life got really good with email? Like, oh my God, I just want more email. Because then, like in school, I would feel more popular with more email. So I decided not to answer every email. I decided not to pick up every phone call. I decided to spend some time with my family. And what happened was I was re-energized. Because in the playing to win methodology, I had this mindset that created diminishing marginal productivity. Diminishing marginal productivity is you're there more often, you're working harder, and you're getting less done. Just before we left for Thanksgiving, I remember my assistant walking up to me and saying, hey, you're double booked. What do you want to do? And I was like, double booked? Oh my God, what are we going to do? Oh, double booked. I was so exhausted, I couldn't even think what to do to double book. Now, right now, I could say, well, let's find out if someone's running late. Is there someone else in the firm that can handle? We could call and reschedule. I could think of 1,000 things because I'm not so damn exhausted right now, right? So playing to win is a dangerous dogma because here's the deal. The people that we see playing to win, what's been going on with Elon Musk lately? Not sleeping, right? Absolutely, does it sound like quality of life? Does it sound like, but yet we put these guys as our icons, and a lot of times they have a massive destruction along their wake of people that they care about and things that start to destroy their life. So the good news is I have a third. I'm not just going to go, okay, there we go. Defense, boom. No, I have a solution. And the more you laugh, the more it encourages me to say these types of things, just so you know. The third category is to win, then play. What do I mean by win, then play? Well, let's dissect 4 or 5 win, then play examples and then give you a practical framework to do it in your life. Here's one example. France gave the United States the Statue of Liberty. Really nice of them to do that. It's pretty cool. The problem is they didn't give him a visitor center, or they didn't erect it into the water. Like, we just had this big statue. So who's going to pay for that? We did something brilliant in New York at that time. In the magazines and in all the newspapers and all the stuff they had back then, they said, hey, anyone that donates 6 cents, you can be the first to come to the visitor center, because you're going to be the people that actually build the concrete, with your money, the concrete for this to be erected on and for the visitor center to exist. And so they had all of the money, and by the way, all the people ready to come and see the Statue of Liberty. I have a buddy named Yannick Silver. If anyone know Yannick, Yannick, so if one person clap for Yannick, I'll have to let him know that he needs to write more books. But he was the first 100 people to put money in Virgin Galactic, right? So that he can go up into space. So all of a sudden, he's already put the money in, and then he's going to get a ride on it. But they've actually got the money from people who are participating, not from disconnected investors, not from venture capitalists that only care about the return. And if you don't get the return, it doesn't matter the impact. They might squash your business. Win then play is you don't have to spend a single penny. You can build the momentum. So we can look at the Super Bowl. We don't even know who's going to be in the Super Bowl, but guess what? The NFL already won. They've already sold all the tickets. They've already sold all the experiences. They've already, got paid by Atlanta. Like, they've already got all this money before the game's even played. Win then play is really cool, by the way. I get a little excited about it because it revolutionized my life. Like, when I wrote Killing Sacred Cows, I decided, well, I don't know if enough people will buy the book. I had like 6,600 people in my database at the time. I made this naive kind of notion that I want to be a New York Times bestseller, not knowing what that meant. And so what I decided to do is, while I was writing the book, I started to pre-sell the book. And I pre-sold 22,000 copies by giving people these old things called DVDs. Yeah, I once tried to give a DVD at an event a few years ago, and a millennial was like, what is that? And they also didn't have a DVD player, so the next day I brought one of mine that we no longer use, and I could relate to them now, right? But I created a DVD, I created a teleseminar course, and all of a sudden I was giving them all this value up front, so 22,000 copies were pre-sold before the book even came out. Win, then play, right? And by the way, ask is so beautiful for it, because another thing that I did is I wanted to do a video series back in 2008, but I didn't have a TV studio yet. And I didn't know if people wanted a video series. I just knew I wanted to film one, and sometimes that would really suck if you just filmed one and you're the only one that wants it. So I just went out to everyone on my list and I said, hey, if I were to do a video series, A, would you be interested? And B, if I were to give it to you for half the price of everyone else so that you can give me feedback as I'm building it, how would that look? How it looked was we got $150,000 up front, built the TV studio, had the whole crew, and I still walked away with $20,000 at the end of it. And I knew I was filming it for actual people, not just to sit on my hard drive at that time or whatever, right? Win, then play. But one of the things that Ryan was talking about on the defensive side that's huge win then play is, I'm not here to tell you to wait 30 years, save a bunch of money, invest it in speculative things. I'm here to give you 4 main I's right now that will put money in your pocket immediately and save you 10 or 20 years. So the first I, and these are all going to be win then play for the rest of the time. I hope I'm done giving the bad news. I'll just give good news that helps you out. And if I give bad news, I'll make fun of it. Is that fair? Okay, so the first I, and I guess it could be a T if you're not from the United States, but it's the IRS, or tax. 93% of the business owners that we've talked to since 2011, 93% are overpaying on their tax. They're unintentionally tipping the government. Now, I'm sure you're happy with what they're doing with the money. But maybe you could do something better. So I'll give you just a quick insight on the framework of that. The first piece is, these are the obvious pieces, and then I'm going to get to the less obvious pieces that really make a big difference. The first piece is, you have to have a tax team. So that team consists of up to 4 people. Number 1 is someone that's just good with record keeping. It could be a bookkeeper, a controller, or a CFO, depending on the size of your organization. The second one is a tax strategist. A tax strategist may or may not be a CPA. Some CPAs are historians, and they're just looking at the data, and they're having you pay tax on previous data. I need someone that looks forward with you and starts to develop a strategy that can be implemented. Oh, thank you. And I'll give you some really cool ways to do that, by the way, so that you can practically implement that. The third piece is an attorney. That attorney may be a corporate attorney or it may be a tax attorney. But the attorney will likely save you more money than the tax strategist, and I'll get into that once again in a minute. The fourth person, does anyone own a brick and mortar building here? If you own a brick and mortar building, the fourth one is an option for you. It's an engineer, specifically a cost segregation engineer. Cost segregation allows you to accelerate the tax depreciation on the building so that you'll save a bunch more money, okay? So up to 4 people on the team. Now, you want to meet with this team at least quarterly. It might only be 20 minutes. The longest meeting I've ever had is an hour. And I found like some with a personality on that team so I can tease and joke with them. Like the first time I had the tax strategist on the meeting, I said, hey, you know the difference between an introverted CPA and an extroverted CPA? He's like, no, what? I'm like, well, when an introverted CPA talks to me, you know, they look at their shoes. When the extroverted CPA talks to me, they look at my shoes. Yeah. That's as good as the jokes get, folks. You know. So that's the team, but you meet with them quarterly, and this is what that conversation sounds like. That meeting, there's no one that's going to say what you do on the meeting is illegal or illegal. So it's your job to think outside of the box and be an entrepreneur on that. You're going to ask a ton of questions like, hey, tell me the coolest strategy you've done for someone in the last while. Like since we spoke last. Are there any new tax changes that impact me? Now that we have the new Trump tax plan, is 199A something that I need to be aware of? Are there additional deductions I could take? And then my favorite thing to do is just look at my life and ask questions that I know they would normally say, you can't write that off, and think of ways to write it off. So I go, hey, we rented a villa in Italy, and we're gonna go spend a couple months there, can I write that off? And then they laugh, and I go, no, I'm serious, like let's talk about how we could write this trip off. Number one, you can actually do an annual corporate compliance meeting anywhere you want, and I think better in Italy. So we go there. Then I said, well, I'm gonna go see where my family's from and get some footage there because I'm bringing my camera guy with me. And I'm actually gonna do a one-day mastermind since I'll be out there for 60 days for our inner circle. So I just go through it. By the end of the call, we wrote off 55% of a trip. Simply because I brainstormed, and their job is to tell me legal or not legal, and I choose the legal path. But I have to ask the questions because they're not necessarily thinking that way, right? Now, the other secret to this is you wanna go back 3 years in your returns and see if you missed anything because you can amend your returns. When my partners died and things were chaotic, I didn't meet with my accountants and tax team. I just tried to keep everything together. Well, 2 years later, when things settled down, I went back and looked. I had overpaid my tax $54,000, $40,000 federal, $14,000 or $15,000 on the state, and I was able to go back and amend and get that money back. Okay, so you want to get a different set of eyes, a different tax strategist every 3 years to go back. And this year, we did just that. We weren't able to go back, but we were able to create new tax strategy for next year. So it's really great because sometimes they just get used to you. You get used to them, and there's a really comfortable relationship. And someone else comes in trying to prove themselves, and they start asking and thinking a little bit differently, and it opens up the world. And I tell them, I'll pay your hourly fee for this call, but I'll double it if you find something. That's what I tell them. So that's the first leg of tax. There's 2 more legs that we're going to go through. The second one, because imagine if you get $20,000 of savings in tax. What we find is for every $250,000 that someone makes in revenue, they're overpaying their taxes on average $10,470. And that's not revenue, that's spendable cash in your pocket. Like that's money that you can take that doesn't have to go through the gauntlet of paying for employees or ads or all that kind of stuff. So part 2, a lot of you will know pieces of this. I just want to take it a little bit deeper. It's deductions. So your tax strategist is primarily responsible for your tax deductions. Those tax deductions look like this. The corporate compliance that we just talked about would be one, but your question you ask is, how does this relate to my business? That's the number 1 question. The number 2 thing you do is you document. How does it relate to the business? And you document. Now let me give you a few things that most people miss when it comes to deductions. I love my kids, but they're expensive. you know? The nice thing is I can pay them $12,000 a year on the new tax plan, and that's 100% tax-free for them and tax deductible for my business. Now I have to actually have them do things, which sometimes, I gotta tell you, my kids are stupid genius. Do you know what stupid genius is? Like, I could be trying to type in a 17-digit Apple passcode. They could listen through the wall, and they're like, that's a capital G, no, lowercase. That's an ampersand. Well, you almost got us, Dad. And then they could, like, go buy something without me knowing. But I could be like, hey, guys, can you sweep the porch? And they're like, what do you mean sweep the porch? I'm like, you hold the broom and you walk. And they'll be like, it drops as they walk. And I'm like, and by the end, I'm like sweeping the porch for them. And then they're like, good job, Dad. Stupid genius, right? Just stupid genius. Like the genius of the stuff they get us to do. So I can pay them up to $12,000. I still control that bank account, but that's 100% tax deductible to my business and 100% tax free to them. Here's the easiest one. They're all models. We love them. We like, I think they're so cute. So we just put them up on a website, $2,500 modeling fee. That's the union standard. That's the easy one. If you pay them $2,500 to mow your lawn, that isn't going to hold up, I've had them come up on stage with me. I've had them hand out books. I've had them go through courses, like absolutely make them like justify what it is that I'm paying them. Another example would be, you can have a home office and write off a ton of your utilities. And if an accountant tells you that you can't, I've read the law. You can. You absolutely can. And by the way, if your accountant tells you they're conservative, let me tell you what they're really saying. Antiquated. They're telling you you're missing tax deductions, and when you catch them, they're going to say, but I'm being conservative. I've been doing this since 1998. We've had someone owe a tiny bit of money in one audit, and someone else that was transitioning to us owe $5,500 in an audit since 1998. Those are our two bad stories. I don't do anything offshore. I don't do anything that's like in the gray area. I just maximize every single thing that's available for you, because the first 300 pages of the tax code are why you have to pay tax. The next 5,300 are all the ways to navigate the system tax-free. Granted, nobody wants to read those. I'm glad there's weirdos that do. And then I just disseminate that so that we can all understand it, right? So deductions, there's tons of deductions out there. We'll get into some more of those. And then let's talk about the third category, because this is the game changer category. So the first category is build the team, look back every 3 years, meet with them proactively. The tax strategist will be responsible for the tax deductions, and the attorney will be responsible for this other category, and this category is called reclassification. You don't even know what a miracle it is that I'm talking this slow. I usually get so fired up that everybody's like pissed off at me by the end of the session. So I just want to make sure that this really sinks in, giving full effort, my A game here. All right, so reclassification is 4 things. First thing, turning active income into passive income. Second thing, turning ordinary income, which is as high as 37.5%, into capital gains, which is as low as 20%. So all of a sudden, you're reclassifying your income to pay less tax. The third category, taxable income to tax-free income, which as a business owner, you have a really unique situation there, and people that are charitably inclined, you have a majorly unique situation there. And then the fourth one is where I sound super smart. Could we get someone with a British accent to say this word? Tax arbitrage, right? Tax arbitrage. Thank you. Yeah, it just sounds twice as smart from someone with the British accent. So smug, but smart, it's cool. So, no.